Chapter 11. As I sat in the car that belonged to Warren and Dude, I began to understand something. Many people were very nice, and they might even take me on a car ride or give me treats, but they would not take me to Lucas. In fact, some of them might take me away from Lucas. That was not right. I needed to go home. I stuck my head out of the window and then my front paws. I wiggled my rear end, pushing myself forward until my front paws were nearly touching the sidewalk. My chest and stomach scraped against the window and it hurt, but I did not stop. I pushed, and then my back paws were scrabbling in the air, and I was falling nose first toward the ground. I landed on the sidewalk in a heap. Quickly, I jumped up and shook myself. I was out of the car and off the leash. I lifted my nose and trotted away. I would go home like a good dog, but first there was something else to investigate. I went toward the smell of food. There were cars and people and buildings and streets all around, so I knew I was in a town. But it was not the one where I lived with Lucas and Mom. It was not the one I had visited with Uncle Jose either. As I followed my nose, some people called to me from windows or open doorways. They seemed friendly, but I did not believe that they would take me to Lucas, so I did not go close to them. I did, however, detect something sweet on the sidewalk, and I ate it quickly. Then I crunched up some dry bread next to it. What a nice town to leave treats out for good dogs to find. I could smell that many dogs had walked over this sidewalk, and I could hear barking in the distance. As I walked along, I saw a dog with a chain that went from his collar to the wall of a house. He barked and lunged at me. I passed him, and then I smelled something interesting. Several dogs, all moving together. I headed for them. When I rounded a corner, I came upon a pack. In the pack, there were 2 male dogs, one small with crazy hair that stuck out in every direction, and one big with a single tooth that poked out of his mouth even when it was closed. There was also a female with scruffy fur, a fluffy butt, and a keen, alert look in her eyes. They were sitting behind a store, and out of that store a delicious smell poured. Saliva pooled in my mouth as I trotted closer. All the members of the pack were staring hard at a doorway, but when I got near, their heads whipped around. Small male ran straight at me, then pulled up, lifting his snout as he stopped. I turned so that we could sniff each other, nose to tail. I moved stiffly, not prepared to bow and invite a play session with these strange dogs, but I wagged my tail to show that I was friendly if they were. Big male moved a little bit away and lifted his leg on a railing. Small male did the same. I politely sniffed. Fluffy Butt had not moved from where she sat. Her eyes stayed fixed on the store's doorway. Then the back door opened and a cloud of smells poured out. Cooking meat and fresh bread and melting butter. It was fabulous. A woman stood in the doorway. "Hello, pretty dogs," she sang out. The males ran over to sit at the woman's feet. I followed, though I held back a little, careful not to crowd the other dogs. What was about to happen? And did it have anything to do with that wonderful smell? The woman had a marvelously greasy paper rolled up in her hands. The paper rustled. What a lovely noise! As she reached inside it and plucked out fatty pieces of cooked beef. Starting with Fluffy Butt, she went down the row of dogs, handing each of us a large chunk. "Are you a new friend?" she asked when she came to me. "What's your name?" She held out a delectable slice. I took it delicately from her fingers and ate it in 2 or 3 bites, so none of the other dogs would have a chance to take it from me. Nothing had ever tasted so good, except, of course, a tiny piece of cheese. "That's all I have tonight, lovelies." "Be good dogs," the woman said. She went inside and shut the door behind her. We all sniffed the ground to see if any of us had dribbled any delicious bits of meat. Fluffy Butt approached and sniffed me all over. Small Male bowed, with his front legs flat on the ground and his rear up, tail wagging. We wrestled for a moment, and then they all moved on. I followed. It felt good to be with other dogs. We had greeted each other, smelled each other, played with each other. I was in the pack now. We walked down a narrow street behind a row of buildings. There were several large metal containers that clearly contained scraps of edible things, but the pack didn't stop until we reached a square plastic bin. Big Male reached up with his nose and knocked the lid off the bin. Odors poured out. Cheese, meat, grease, sweets. I breathed in hungrily. Then Fluffy Butt did something amazing. She leaped up so that her front paws and head were inside the bin. Her back paws scrabbled at the plastic side. She fell back almost at once, but now she had something in her mouth, a cardboard box. Small bundles wrapped in plastic spilled from it all over the ground. Those bundles smelled like food. Each dog snatched a meal and darted away from the pack to finish it off. When I tore off the plastic, there was meat and bread inside mine, coated in a tangy sauce that made me sneeze. Fluffy Butt dove into the bin again and again. Sometimes the things she pulled out were not interesting at all, little pieces of vegetables or scraps of crumpled paper. But a few times she found more to eat. I was the youngest, so I held back, letting the two males and Fluffy Butt snatch up what they wanted. That was the rule of the pack. Once we'd gotten all we could out of the bin, the two males trotted away. Fluffy Butt and I followed. We made our way to another door with fantastic smells behind it. I was not as hungry as I'd been earlier when I'd met Warren and Dude in the woods, but I would still be happy to have more to eat, if anyone wanted to offer it to me. Small Male and I wrestled while Big Male lifted his leg and left his mark on a wall. Then there was a noise from inside the door, and we all ran expectantly to it and did sit, being very good dogs. The door opened. "Well, hello there. Are you here for a handout?" a man called. He did not hand us treats, as the woman had done earlier. He tossed them at us, one dog at a time. The piece of crispy, salty meat that he pitched at me bounced off my nose, but I jumped on it and gobbled it up before any of the other dogs could get it. Bacon. The man shut the door. "That's all I have for tonight. Go on home now. Go on home." I stared in amazement. How did this man know about go home? The pack trotted away, and I followed. But I wasn't so sure that I wanted to stay with them. I was very far from Lucas, and I had just been commanded to go home. It felt like a physical pull inside me, as if the invisible leash pulling me toward Lucas had just tightened up. Fluffy Butt left us. One moment she was with the pack, and the next she simply turned away and trotted up a walkway toward a front porch. And then Big Male went away too. Small Male marked a tree with Big Male while Big Male went straight to a building and climbed up a few steps to a metal door. I heard a rasping sound as he dragged his claws over the door's surface. After a moment, a small boy opened the door, and Big Male went inside. The door shut. Small Male sniffed me. He turned toward a house and then turned back to look at me, wagging. He spun in a circle, his eyes bright. Inside the house, I could see two children. They ran past a lighted window again and again. They were playing Chase Me. I knew that Small Male wanted me to follow him, but I understood something now. The pack was doing what Bacon Man had said. They were doing go home. They had houses and families and people just like I did. The difference was that they were close to their homes, and I was still far away from mine. I could not go with Small Male because my person was not in his house or his family. My person was Lucas. I turned my nose in the direction I knew would lead me to Lucas. That way there was no town. There were hills and streams and trees, and I could smell the sharp tang of something very cold. If I wanted to go home, I would have to travel through those things. I would have to be without a pack, without people, maybe for a long time. Small Male barked once and headed toward his house. Part of me wanted to join him. He had the smell of more than one human hand on his fur, and it would be so nice to sleep on a soft bed and be petted by Small Male's people. But I could not be with my boy and also with Small Male. I turned away from him, breathed in a deep whiff of the night, and went to find my Lucas.